Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a scenario that I think is going to feel uncomfortably familiar to a lot of people listening.
Oh boy.
You sit down, it's Sunday night, you open up the laptop and you build the perfect spreadsheet.
Yep, I've been there.
You've got the pivot tables, the color-coded categories, the projected savings rate. It is like a work of art. The math all works out.
It's logically perfect, airtight.
Exactly. And then, 3 weeks later, you look at your bank account and the whole plan is just in flames.
Huh. Yes. The scene of the crime.
You bought the thing you swore you wouldn't buy, you transferred money out of the savings account to cover the checking, and you're right back at square one. The math didn't break, the spreadsheet didn't glitch.
No, the user glitched.
That is the premise we are unpacking today. We have this tendency, especially when we get into the optimization side of life, which I know our listeners love,
Oh, for sure.
to treat money like it's a physics problem. We think if we just get the inputs right, the output is guaranteed. But all the sources we've pulled for this deep dive argue that finance is actually closer to biology or psychology.
It's messy.
It's so messy. It's emotional.
It's the software problem.
Yeah.
That's really the core metaphor that runs through all this research we looked at. You can have the best hardware, a high income, great market returns, low taxes,
Well, external stuff.
all of it. But if the operating system, the thing running in your brain, has buggy code, you're going to crash. Every time.
So today we're putting the calculator away. We are not talking about which ETF to buy or, tax loss harvesting.
No math.
We are doing a deep dive entirely into financial mindsets, and I want to be really clear. This isn't just think positive and get rich.
Not at all. That's the superficial take on it. We're looking at behavioral economics, psychology, and the data is just fascinating because it shows that your mindset is often a much stronger predictor of your net worth than your IQ or even your salary.
That's a huge claim.
It is, but the evidence is there. We found studies that track people with, average incomes who retire wealthy, and then you compare them to high-income earners, doctors, lawyers who are living paycheck to paycheck. The difference isn't the math, it's the headspace.
So our mission today is to, I guess, identify the bugs in our own software. We've gone through a huge stack of literature on the psychology of wealth to find the specific mental frameworks that, separate the wealthy from the worried.
Right.
We're going to look at the whole scarcity versus abundance debate, but hopefully with a bit more nuance than you usually hear. We'll talk about what it means to have an owner identity, the pain of the long game, and this concept of freedom money.
And we're going to try to give you the code patches, the actual fixes. Because the good news is, unlike a computer, you can rewrite your own operating system while it's running.
Which sounds incredibly dangerous, but let's give it a shot. I want to start with that paradox you just mentioned. Intelligence versus wealth. Why are so many smart people so bad with money?
It's a great question, isn't it? Because you'd think the person who can solve differential equations or, perform heart surgery could balance a budget.
It seems like it should be easy for them.
But the research suggests that financial intelligence and academic intelligence draw on totally different parts of the brain. Academic intelligence is analytical, it's logical. Financial success, especially in the accumulation phase, is almost entirely behavioral.
It's impulse control.
It is, 100%, and it's emotional regulation. One of the papers we looked at described money not as currency, but as emotional concentrate.
Ooh, I like that, emotional concentrate.
Yeah. When you spend or save or invest, you aren't just moving numbers around. You're reacting to fear, to status anxiety, to childhood trauma, or just, the desire for a quick dopamine hit.
So when a smart person makes what we'd call a dumb money decision, like panicking and selling all their stocks at the bottom of a crash, they aren't making a math error.
No, not at all.
They're making an emotional error.
Precisely. They are trying to stop the pain of seeing the number go down. That's a survival instinct, not a logic problem. And if you try to solve that with a spreadsheet, you will fail every single time. You have to solve it with psychology.
This brings us right to the first big framework from the sources. Growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Now, I know this is pretty standard educational theory, Carol Dweck and all that, but how does it apply specifically to your bank account?
Well, just think about the phrases people use all the time. I'm just bad with money.
Guilty.
I'm a spender, I can't help it. Or investing is for, finance bros, I'll never get it.
Okay, I think I've said at least 2 of those this week.
We all have. And that is a fixed mindset. It treats your financial capability as this static trait, like your eye color. I was born this way.
And what's the problem with that?
The problem is that it acts as a permission slip. If you're just bad with money, then you don't have to try to get better. You're off the hook.
It's a defense mechanism, isn't it? If I try to learn and I still fail, then I have to admit I'm stupid. But if I don't even try because that's just how I am, then my ego is safe.
Bingo. You've hit the nail on the head. Now, flip it to the growth mindset. In a financial context, this introduces the power of one simple word, yet.
Yet.
I don't understand options trading yet. I haven't hit my savings goal yet. It reframes a deficit, something you lack, into just a temporary state. It's a place on a journey, not the final destination.
The source material had this really great point about how these two mindsets view failure differently.
This is absolutely critical to a fixed mindset. A financial mistake like, say, you blow your budget on a vacation or buy a lemon of a car, it's an identity verdict.
It's proof.
It's proof. See, I'm an idiot. I knew I couldn't do this. It just confirms the bias you already had about yourself.
So you spiral. And for the growth mindset, how do they see that same mistake?
It's tuition. You paid a fee to learn a lesson.
I love that framing. Tuition. Although I have to say, some of my tuition payments over the years have been pretty darn expensive.
I think we can all relate to that. But as long as you don't pay for the same class twice, it's actually a good investment. The growth mindset allows you to look at the mistake analytically without the shame.
So instead of, I'm an idiot, it's
okay, I overspent. Why? Let's look at the data. Was I stressed out? Was I trying to impress someone? What was the trigger? You become a researcher of your own behavior rather than a judge of your own character.
That requires a level of self-awareness that I think most of us just skip. We feel the guilt, we feel the shame, but we don't do the autopsy on the decision.
Right. And that's where this other concept from the research comes in, the idea of money scripts.
Okay, what are those?
They're the unconscious beliefs we inherited, usually from our childhood, that run our financial lives.
They're like the invisible narrators in our head.
Exactly. And they are powerful. Maybe you grew up in a house where the script was, rich people are greedy and evil. If that script is running in the background of your operating system, you will subconsciously self-sabotage every time you start to accumulate a little bit of wealth, because deep down, you don't want to be evil.
Or the opposite could be true, right? Maybe you grew up in a family where money was the primary language of love. So now as an adult, you can't show affection to your partner or your kids without buying them expensive things.
That's a very common one. The purchaser of love script. And the actionable tip from the research here is, well, it's a bit uncomfortable, but it's really effective. Journaling.
Ugh, journaling. I know it works, but man, it feels like homework.
It doesn't have to be a whole Dear Diary thing. It's just data collection. A simple hack is to journal after a significant or emotional purchase. You buy the $200 sneakers. Fine. But then you have to sit down for 2 minutes and write down, what was I feeling 5 minutes before I clicked buy?
You're trying to find the trigger, the why behind the what.
You're debugging your own code. You might find, oh, I was feeling incompetent after that meeting at work, so I bought these shoes to feel successful. Once you see that link, you have the power to break it. You can't patch a bug you haven't found.
That's a great point. You have to see the code to rewrite it.
You do.
Okay, let's move to the second segment. And this is probably the most famous dichotomy in this whole space, but I want to push back on it a little because it can get very very fast.
I know exactly where you're going.
Scarcity versus abundance.
It absolutely can drift into magical thinking if we aren't careful. Just manifest abundance. That is not what we are talking about here.
Right, because to me, scarcity feels very real. If you have $10 in your bank account, you don't have a scarcity mindset, you have actual scarcity, you're broke. Is it fair to tell that person they just need to think abundantly?
That's a totally valid critique, and it's a crucial distinction. Real physical resource scarcity is a trap. It's a real-world constraint. But what the research focuses on is the psychological residue of scarcity that persists even when the physical danger is gone.
Okay, explain that.
We see this all the time in people who grew up poor but are now high earners, yet they still live in a constant state of panic.
The bag lady syndrome, this deep-seated fear that it could all vanish overnight, even if they have $1 million in the bank.
Yes. The scarcity mindset views the world as a zero-sum game, a fixed pie. If your neighbor gets a promotion, it feels like they took a slice that should have been yours. It breeds resentment and paranoia. But the real damage it does is cognitive.
Talk to me about tunneling. I found that concept in the reading just fascinating.
So, psychologists have found that a state of scarcity consumes an enormous amount of your mental bandwidth. If you're constantly worried about how you're going to pay the rent this month, your functional IQ actually drops. Yes, you tunnel on the immediate problem. You literally can't think clearly about next year because your brain is using all its processing power just to survive next week.
Which explains why people in poverty sometimes make what look like bad long-term decisions from the outside. It's not a character flaw, it's a cognitive load issue. Their focus is necessarily on the short term.
Exactly. They are putting out the fire that's burning in front of them. The problem is, when you keep that mindset even after the fire is out, you see people who are financially secure hoarding cash in a checking account, losing value to inflation because they are terrified of the risk of investing. They are playing not to lose instead of playing to win.
So what is the abundance mindset then if we strip away all the magic crystals and vision boards?
At its core, it's the belief that value can be created. The pie isn't fixed. It can grow. And if it can grow, then someone else's success doesn't diminish my potential for success. It shifts the focus from defensively, protecting what I have, to offensively creating what I want.
It sounds like it completely changes the risk calculus.
Drastically. A scarcity mindset says, don't take that risk, you might lose the little safety you have. An abundance mindset says, take the calculated risk, because even if you fail, you have the ability to generate more resources and try again. It creates resilience.
There's a really practical linguistic shift that was mentioned in the sources. I think it's a Robert Kiyosaki thing.
Oh yeah, it's a classic. It's shifting your internal monologue from, I can't afford that, to, how can I afford that?
It sounds so subtle, but it really does feel like it flips a switch in your brain.
It does. I can't afford that is a statement. It's a period at the end of a sentence. It's a door slamming shut. Your brain just stops working on the problem.
Right, problem over. Can't do it.
But how can I afford that is a question. It's an open door. It forces your brain to start problem solving. Okay, I can't afford it right now, but what would have to be true for me to afford it? Could I cut expenses somewhere else? Could I start that consulting side gig? Could I sell the second car we never use?
It turns a constraint into a creative challenge.
And that is the absolute hallmark of the abundance mindset. It's about agency. The scarcity mindset often overlaps with a victim mentality. The economy is rigged, my boss hates me, taxes are too high.
I mean, some of those things might actually be true.
They might be, but dwelling on the things you can't control doesn't get you paid. The abundance mindset acknowledges the challenges and says, okay, the game might be rigged. How do I win anyway?
Right.
It focuses entirely on the variables you have the power to change.
Let's pivot from there to the mechanism that actually builds the wealth once you have the right mindset in place. We have to talk about time and vision.
Or, as the research calls it, the marshmallow test of adulthood.
Okay, for anyone who doesn't know the marshmallow test, it's the famous experiment with kids, a sugary treat, wait 15 minutes and you get 2. The application to adult finances is it's brutal.
It is, because the waiting period for an adult isn't 15 minutes, it's 15 years.
Right.
Or 30 years.
Right.
Or more.
That's the problem. I'm reading these charts about compounding, and the big, exciting payoff is always in year 30. And my brain just goes, in year 30, I'll be old, and my back will probably hurt. I want the fun now.
That is the fundamental battle. It's present self versus future self. And delayed gratification is the superpower here. It's the ability to truly empathize with your future self.
Empathize? How so?
To realize that future you is a real person. And that person is going to be really, really annoyed if present you spend all their retirement money on DoorDash and concert tickets. You have to care about that future person's well-being.
It connects directly to the concept of opportunity costs.
Which is a concept everyone sort of understands in Econ 101, but completely fails at in real life. Every dollar you spend today is a seed you ate instead of planted.
I hate that image. Eating the seeds, it's so visceral.
It's meant to be. If you spend, say, $100 on a nice dinner out, you aren't just out $100. You are out the $100 plus all the compound interest that $100 would have generated over the next 40 years.
So what does that look like?
At a reasonable 8% return, that $100 dinner actually cost your future self about $2,000.
See, that's the kind of math that makes you not want to ever leave the house again. If I start thinking about every $5 coffee as a $500 loss in the future, I'm just going to be miserable.
And you shouldn't obsess over the coffee. That's missing the point. But for the big ticket items, the cars, the house upgrades, the lavish vacations, you have to respect the math. This is where the magic of compounding comes in. But I want to focus on what the sources call the boring middle.
Yeah, let's talk about that because everyone loves to show that hockey stick graph where the line goes vertical at the end,
Hmm.
but nobody ever talks about the long flat line at the beginning.
The sources call this the valley of disappointment. You decide to save $500 a month, you do it diligently for a whole year, you look at your account, and you have $6,000 plus, I don't know, 150 bucks of interest. You feel like you're getting absolutely nowhere.
And meanwhile, your friend put $6,000 into some meme coin and doubled it in a week, and they won't shut up about it.
Exactly. And you feel like a complete chump for being responsible. But compounding is, by its nature, backloaded. We saw that data point you mentioned, $500 a month at a 7% return. After 20 years, it's about $245,000. That's solid. Life-changing even.
But that's not the magic part.
No, the magic is that you have to wait another 20 years to see the real explosion. At year 40, that same account is worth over $1.2 million.
So the first 20 years gets you a quarter million, but the next 20 years gets you a full million.
That's the power of the exponent. The money eventually starts working much, much harder than you do.
Hmm.
But you have to survive the decades where the results are basically invisible. The owner mindset, which we'll get to, is essentially the ability to endure that boredom for a long-term payoff.
Wealth is what you don't see. I think that's a Morgan Housel line.
It is. It's the unspent money growing quietly in the background. It's not flashy. It's not a flex on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's just planting trees whose shade, you won't sit under for a very long time.
Speaking of owner, let's get into segment 4. This is the big shift from consumer to owner. And I want to get away from the basic textbook definitions here. We know assets put money in your pocket and liabilities take it out. But this is deeper than that, isn't it? It's an identity shift.
It is. It's a fundamental change in how you interface with the entire economy. A consumer walks through the world looking for things to buy. They see a new iPhone, they see a status symbol, they see a cool gadget, they see a monthly payment plan.
I see the product, the thing itself.
An owner walks through the world looking for systems to own a piece of. They look at the long line of people waiting for the new iPhone, and they don't think, I want a new phone. They think, I want to own shares in Apple.
It's looking at a corporation not as some predator trying to take your money, but as a potential partner in wealth creation.
Exactly. When you own a broad market index fund like the S&P 500, you have the smartest CEOs, the best engineers, and the most aggressive marketing teams in the entire world working for you. You literally wake up in the morning and Apple has sold 1 million phones while you were sleeping, and you get a tiny slice of that profit.
That feels like a cheat code for life.
It is the only cheat code that actually works. You cannot work enough hours at a job to outrun capital appreciation over the long term. You have to switch sides of the table. You have to stop being the source of revenue and start being the recipient of it.
But this gets really tricky when we talk about income versus wealth, because society conflates them all the time. If I see a guy driving a Ferrari, my first thought is, wow, he's rich.
He might be rich, or he might just have a really high income and a massive soul-crushing lease payment. The sources are so clear on this. Income is the stream of water flowing into a bucket. Wealth is the water that stays in the bucket.
And you can have a massive stream flowing into a bucket that's full of holes.
We see this with professional athletes and celebrities all the time. Huge inflows, equally huge outflows. The net result is zero. In fact, a high income can be a dangerous trap. They call it the golden handcuffs.
How did that work?
You start making good money, so you buy the bigger house, the nicer car, you put the kids in private school. Soon, you've built a lifestyle that requires you to make $300,000 a year just to keep the lights on. That's an incredibly fragile life.
You're on a treadmill that's set to maximum speed. If you trip for even a second, if you lose your job, get sick, burn out, you go flying off the back.
Whereas someone with a much more modest income but a consistently high savings rate, a big reservoir of water in their bucket, is anti-fragile. They can survive the shocks because their lifestyle isn't dependent on a peak income level.
So the key tactical move here, the way to apply this, is the classic advice: pay yourself first. But I want to know why this works psychologically. Why can't I just be disciplined and save what's left over at the end of the month?
Because of Parkinson's law. The original law is work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Well, there's a financial corollary. Spending expands to fill the money available. If that money is sitting in your checking account, your brain sees it as available resources. You will find a reason to spend it.
Oh, the car's making a weird noise. I should probably get that fixed. Oh, I really need some new work clothes for that presentation.
Exactly. The justification machine in our brain is incredibly powerful. By automating the savings immediately, the day your paycheck hits before you even see it, you are creating what's called artificial scarcity. You're forcing your consumer self to adapt and live on a smaller budget while your owner self gets fed silently in the background.
You're essentially tricking your present self to benefit your future self.
They're hacking your own weakness. You're acknowledging that you don't have perfect willpower, so you design a system that removes the need for it.
I like that. Artificial scarcity. It sounds much better than being broke. Let's move to lifestyle design, because once you actually have some money, how you choose to spend it becomes critically important. And the big enemy here is keeping up with the Joneses.
The Joneses are the ultimate final boss of personal finance.
But here's the thing that's changed. The Joneses aren't just your next-door neighbors anymore. It used to be you just had to compete with the guy who had a slightly nicer lawnmower. Now, you open Instagram, and you're competing with a billionaire on a yacht in Dubai and an influencer getting free stuff in LA.
The comparison set has gone global, and it's a recipe for misery. It's absolutely tragic. But the reality check from the experts is so validating. The Joneses are likely broke.
You mean just purely on a statistical basis?
Statistically, yes. The median household has very high debt levels, very little in savings, and reports high levels of financial stress. The flashy lifestyle you are envying is often financed by MasterCard and a home equity line of credit. The key insight is, don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel.
So how do we opt out of that race? It feels like it's all around us.
The framework for this is value-based spending. And this is where we can finally settle the whole latte factor debate. Some gurus say, you're poor because you buy coffee. Others say, buy all the coffee you want, just don't buy a house you can't afford.
So where did the sources we looked at land on this?
They land on ruthless prioritization. Ramit Sethi is really big on this. The idea is to be ruthlessly frugal on the things that don't matter to you so you can be extravagantly generous on the things that do.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. If you don't really care about cars, you should drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic until the wheels fall off and feel zero shame about it.
Okay.
But if you absolutely love to travel, you should take that money you saved on the car and spend $10,000 on a trip to Japan and not feel an ounce of guilt.
That feels so much more sustainable. It's not about deprivation across the board. It's about strategic allocation.
Right. It moves the core question you ask yourself before a purchase. You stop asking, can I afford this? And you start asking, does this actually align with my deepest values? If you are buying a BMW primarily to impress a stranger at a stoplight, that's a waste of money. If you're buying it because you genuinely love German engineering and the driving experience is a source of joy for you, that's a valid hobby.
This connects directly to the next point, which is self-worth versus net worth.
This is probably the deepest part of the entire deep dive. If you need your money to prove to yourself and others that you are successful, you will never, ever have enough money.
Because the goalpost always moves.
Always. There is always a bigger boat, a bigger house, a more exclusive vacation spot. But if you can manage to detach your identity as a person from your balance sheet, you unlock the superpower of stealth wealth.
Okay, what is stealth wealth?
It's when you stop trying to signal your success to others. You start wearing comfortable clothes instead of branded ones. You drive the reliable car instead of the flashy one. You don't need the external validation from others because the internal validation is solid. You know you're secure. You don't need to prove it.
It seems like the richest people I know, I mean the actually wealthy ones, not the high-income ones, are the most low-key.
That's how they got rich and how they stayed rich. They avoided the biggest wealth destroyer there is, lifestyle inflation. When they got a raise or a bonus, they didn't immediately go out and get the bigger house or the fancier car. They just increased their savings rate.
They kept the gap between earning and spending as wide as possible.
They realized that enough is a number you have to define, not a feeling you chase. If you don't define what enough looks like for you, you will run on the hedonic treadmill forever. It's a race with no finish line.
Okay, segment 6. I want to spend some real time here because I think this is where listeners can really start to see themselves in the material. The sources we read broke down 4 distinct financial personality types. We aren't all built the same way.
No, not at all. And trying to force a prideful personality into a strict, traditional artisan budget without any adjustments is a recipe for failure and shame.
All right, let's walk through the 4 types. First up, the nomad.
The nomad is the adventurer. They value experiences, freedom, and flexibility above absolutely everything else. They hate being tied down. To a nomad, a 30-year mortgage feels like a prison sentence.
I feel very seen right now.
The nomad is fantastic at living a rich life right now. They have amazing stories and have seen the world, but their big blind spot is the future. They might look up at age 50 and realize they have a passport full of stamps, but no assets to their name.
So what's the fix for the nomad? How do you get them to save?
You have to frame it in their language. They need to automate contributions to their freedom funds. They don't need to save for retirement, which sounds old and boring. They need to save for the 6-month sabbatical in Thailand fund or the quit my job and start a business fund. Frame the investing not as settling down, but as buying future freedom and options.
Okay, that makes sense. Next up, the prodigal.
The prodigal is the life of the party. They're generous to a fault, impulsive, and live completely in the moment. Their mantra is, you can't take it with you.
These are the people who always insist on picking up the tab for the whole table, even if they can't really afford it.
Yes, they have big hearts and often very empty wallets. Their core struggle is impulse control. So the fix for the prodigal is one word: friction.
Friction.
You have to make it incredibly hard for them to spend money on impulse. Delete the saved credit card information from their web browser. Use cash envelopes for categories like dining out. Create a mandatory 48-hour cooling-off period for any non-essential purchase over $50.
You have to put speed bumps between the impulse and the action.
That's the perfect analogy. Just slow them down. Then we have the artisan loyalist. This is the traditional conservative saver.
This is the grandpa archetype, right?
Very much so. They are incredibly steady. They value security and consistency. They pay all their bills on time. They take pride in having no debt. They are the backbone of the economy. But their trap is risk aversion.
How is that a trap?
They might keep all their money in a high-yield savings account earning, maybe 4% because they are terrified of the stock market's volatility. They can't stand the thought of losing a dollar.
So they end up losing purchasing power to inflation over time because they're too safe?
Precisely. They need to be gently pushed to take calculated risks. They need to understand that not investing is also risk. It's the risk of guaranteed failure to outpace inflation.
And finally, the fourth type, the artisan, ambitious.
These are the builders. They have the security focus of the loyalists, but they're also growth-oriented. They want to create generational wealth. They are starting businesses, buying investment properties, optimizing complex tax strategies.
That sounds like the ideal type. What's the downside?
Burnout. And what one source called scoreboard syndrome, they can get so obsessed with watching the number go up that they forget to actually live their life. They are on track to be the richest person in the graveyard.
They need to learn how to decumulate, to actually spend some of the money they've worked so hard for.
They need to be reminded that the money is a tool to build a great life, not the high score in a video game.
I think the most important insight here is that you can move between these types. You aren't permanently stuck in one box.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can evolve. A prodigal can learn to build systems and become more of an artisan. But the key to that evolution is the next point. You have to build systems over willpower.
Say more about that. Why is willpower not enough?
Because we vastly overestimate our own discipline. You might feel disciplined on a Tuesday morning after a good night's sleep, but on Friday night after a long, hard week, you have zero discipline. Willpower is a finite, depletable resource. If your entire financial plan relies on you making the right choice every single time, it will eventually break.
So the system has to be stronger than the person on their worst day.
Exactly. Automate everything. The transfer to your investment account should happen the day your paycheck hits, automatically. Your bills should all be on autopay. The big decisions are made once in a moment of clarity and strength, so they don't have to be remade every single day in moments of weakness and temptation.
Don't rely on discipline to design your life.
That's the mantra.
We're almost out of time, but we absolutely have to discuss one last concept. It has a spicy name in a lot of the literature.
Ah, yes. The technical term?
FU money.
Indeed.
For any kids listening, let's call it freedom money, or maybe forget you money.
It sounds aggressive, but the feeling it provides is actually about peace.
Yeah.
It's having a liquidity buffer, usually 6 to 12 months of living expenses, sitting in a safe, accessible account that gives you agency.
It's the ability to say no.
It completely changes the power dynamic of your entire life. If you live paycheck to paycheck, you have to take the abuse from the toxic boss. You have to stay in the bad situation because you can't afford to miss a single paycheck. You have zero leverage.
But if you have, say, $50,000 in the bank.
You sit differently in your chair during the meeting. You negotiate harder for that raise because you're genuinely willing to walk away if they say no. And ironically, because you aren't desperate, you usually end up with better opportunities and making more money.
It's the paradox of neediness. Opportunities and people tend to run away from those who seem to need them too much.
Exactly. This money buys you resilience. It converts your financial capital into psychological capital. It turns a potential crisis into a mere inconvenience. Your car breaks down. It's annoying, but you write a check. You get laid off. You can take a month or two to find the right next job, not just the first job that comes along.
That is the ultimate goal, isn't it? It's not the Lamborghini, it's the lack of panic when life happens.
Peace of mind. That's the real asset.
So let's bring this deep dive in for a landing. We've covered a ton of ground here, from, neural pathways to compound interest tables. What is the grand synthesis? What does it all boil down to?
If I had to summarize the entire journey, it's a journey of identity. You are consciously moving from a victim, where things happen to you, to an owner, where you make things happen.
From scarcity to abundance.
From consumer to investor.
You are realizing that you aren't just an NPC in your financial life. You're the developer.
You're the developer, you are the one writing the code.
And if the software is glitchy, if you keep crashing your budget, it's not because you're a broken person. It's just because you have some legacy code from your childhood that needs a patch.
And you have the power to patch it. That's the core of the growth mindset.
I want to leave the listener with that final provocative thought you shared with me before we started recording, the quote that kind of summed this all up perfectly.
It's from the author Jim Rohn, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy one. Your net worth rarely exceeds your self-development.
Say that one more time. Your net worth rarely exceeds your self-development.
It hits hard, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It implies that your money is a mirror. It reflects your habits, your discipline, your knowledge, your emotional regulation. If you want the bank account to grow, you have to grow first. You have to become the person who is capable of responsibly managing and multiplying that wealth.
Yeah.
You can't pour $1 million fortune into a 10-cent mind. It will just leak out.
The lottery winners who go bankrupt prove that every single day.
They are the ultimate case study.
So here is the challenge for everyone listening. Don't go open a spreadsheet today. Don't go check your 401k balance. Instead, just pick one of the mindsets we talked about.
Just one.
Maybe it's just catching yourself when you're about to say, I can't afford it, and forcing yourself to flip it to, how can I afford it? Maybe it's taking 5 minutes to identify one of your family's money scripts.
Maybe it's identifying which personality type you are and setting up one tiny point of friction to slow down your impulse spending.
Just one patch. Install it this week and see if the system runs a little smoother.
And have some patience with the installation process. It takes time.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious.